geehrte Damen und Herren, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, lieber Herr Dr. Jürgen Warmbrunn, das ist unsere dritte Teilnahme an den ABDOS-Tagungen während des russisch-ukrainischen Krieges. Wir danken Ihnen ganz herzlich für die Gelegenheit, an der Konferenz in Straßburg teilzunehmen und uns erneut als Teil der europäischen Bibliotheksgemeinschaft fühlen zu dürfen. Seit mehr als 50 Jahren vereint ABDOS Menschen mit gemeinsamen kulturellen, wissenschaftlichen und sozialen Wert. Der Krieg in der Ukraine ist, der mehr als 2 Jahre andauert, hat die Gesellschaft gezwungen, ihre Bemühungen auf die Wiederherstellung der historischen Gerechtigkeit und die Pflege des nationalen Gedächtnisses zu konzentrieren. Im vorigen Jahr begingen wir der 50. Jahrestag der Gründung der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft. Sie ist die älteste ukrainische wissenschaftliche öffentliche Gemeinschaftsinstitution und wurde 1873 gegründet. Gleichzeitig feiern wir den 125. Jahrestag des Beginns der Tätigkeit der Ärztlichen Kommission der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft. Sie war die erste wissenschaftliche Organisation ukrainischer Ärzte und brachte ein breites Spektrum an Persönlichkeiten aus Wissenschaft, Kultur und öffentlichem Leben zusammen. Die Grundlage dieser gesamtukrainischen Einheit ist die Geschichte der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft. Die Gesellschaft wurde auf Initiative von Persönlichkeiten aus Naddnieprянщина und Galizien gegründet. Diese Gesellschaft füllte zahlreiche Lücken in verschiedenen Bereichen der ukrainischen Wissenschaft, vor allem in der Ukrainistik, und hat sich bis heute gehalten, das nationale Bewusstsein des ukrainischen Volkes zu formen, wissenschaftliche Kontakte mit Gelehrten anderer Länder herzustellen, wissenschaftliche Ideen zu entwickeln, wissenschaftliche Schulen zu bilden, die in der Welt der Wissenschaft Anerkennung gefunden haben. Die Geschichte der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft lässt sich in 5 Perioden unterteilen. In der ersten Periode 1873-1892 wurde sie Literarische Gesellschaft genannt. Die Gesellschaft veröffentlichte über 50 Bücher und Broschüren zu verschiedenen Themen. Der erste Vorsitzende der Gesellschaft war Kornel Suschkewitsch. Die zweite Periode 1892-1913 begann mit der Reorganisation der Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft zu einer Institution mit einem klaren wissenschaftlichen Programm unter dem Namen Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft. Nach der Vorbildung der westeuropäischen Akademien der Wissenschaften jener Zeit ist die Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft in wissenschaftliche Sektionen unterteilt. Das heißt historisch-philosophische, philologische, mathematisch-naturwissenschaftlich, ärztliche, medizinische. In den Sektionen wurden Kommissionen eingerichtet. Im Jahr 1892 wurde die Satzung der Gesellschaft verabschiedet. Darin wurden die Bedingungen für die Mitgliedschaft in der Gesellschaft festgelegt, die auf den Stufen der wissenschaftlichen Qualifikation beruhten. Ordentliches Mitglied, Vollmitglied, Ehrenmitglied. Ende des 19. Jahrhunderts hatte die Gesellschaft schon etwa 200 Mitglieder. 1892 wurde die Bibliothek in Lemberg gegründet, die mit der wissenschaftlichen Literatur ausgestattet war und vor dem Ersten Weltkrieg etwa 300 Bücher und Zeitschriften umfasste. 1893 wurde das Museum gegründet, in dem Archäologie, Ethnographie, Naturgeschichte und bildende Kunst ausgestellt wurden. 1905 wurde die Verlagsbuchhandlung in Lemberg mit Filialen in Kiew und Charkow eröffnet. Die ersten Vollmitglieder, das waren 32 Personen, wurden am 1. Juni 1899 gewählt. Die Entwicklung der Gesellschaft wurde durch Fonds erleichtert, die von Mäzenen eingerichtet wurden, insbesondere von Koniski, Hruschewski, Ogonowski, Kotlerewski und anderen. Auch die Regierung Österreich-Ungarn gewährte der Gesellschaft erhebliche Zuschüsse. Dritte Periode 1913-1945 ist sowohl durch wissenschaftliche Errungenschaften als auch durch den Rückgang der Forschungs- und Publikationstätigkeit kennengezeichnet. Die Aktivitäten der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft wurden durch den Ersten Weltkrieg unterbrochen und 1914-1915 wurde die Gesellschaft einschließlich des Museums, der Druckerei und der Bibliothek zerstört. In den Jahren 1920-1926 schufen die Mitglieder der Gesellschaft zusätzlich zu ihren eigenen wissenschaftlichen Projekten eine Alternative zur heilpädagogischen Hochschulbildung, indem sie die Geheime Universität Lemberg und das Geheime Polytechnikum Lemberg gründeten, an denen Mitglieder der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft lehrten. Im Jahr 1939 wurde die Arbeit der Gesellschaft von der sowjetischen Macht nahezu eingestellt und 1940 wurde die Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft und alle damit verbundenen Einrichtungen in Lemberg aufgelöst. Die Einstellung zur Gesellschaft änderte sich während der deutschen Besatzung nicht. Mitglieder einiger Sektionen und Kommissionen führten heimlich die wissenschaftliche Tätigkeit innerhalb der Gesellschaft fort, beriefen Sitzungen ein, wählen aus ihrer Mitte Vollmitglieder und verfassten die wissenschaftlichen Werke. Zwischen 1873 und 1939 veröffentlichte die Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft 591 Bände in verschiedene Schriftenreihen, 352 Einzelwerke, Lehrbücher und Karten, 103 Ausgaben literarischen und öffentlichen sowie literarischen und künstlerischen Zeitschriften, 95 belletristische Titel und 31 Broschüren. In dieser Periode zählte die Gesellschaft über 220 Mitglieder, die herausragendsten ukrainischen Persönlichkeiten aus Wissenschaft und Kultur. Im 20. Jahrhundert pflegte die Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft die Zusammenarbeit mit dem Bücheraustausch mit etwa 300 wissenschaftlichen Zentren und Bibliotheken weltweit. In der vierten Periode 1947-1989 arbeitete die Gesellschaft in Exil in Ländern Westeuropas, Amerikas und Australiens, die sie in der UdSSR verboten war. Die Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft unterstützte ukrainische Wissenschaftler, verteidigte die objektive nationale Geschichte, bewahrte die ukrainische Sprache und entwickelte erfolgreich den Verlagsprozess in verschiedenen Wissenschaftsbereichen. Die fünfte Periode seit 1989 ist die Wiederaufnahme der Arbeit der Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft in der Ukraine und die Fortsetzung ihrer Tätigkeit im Exil in Australien, Amerika und Europa. Heute hat die Gesellschaft mehr als 300 Mitglieder verschiedenen Fachrichtungen, 6 Sektionen, 37 Kommissionen und seit 1992 wurde in der Ukraine 190 Vollmitglieder und 13 Ehrenmitglieder gewählt. Für den 50. Jahrestag der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft waren viele Veranstaltungen geplant, noch bevor der russisch-ukrainische Krieg begann. Mehr als 20 Publikationen wurden dem Jubiläum der Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft gewidmet, darunter die zweibändige Publikation 100 Jahre im Dienste der ukrainischen Wissenschaft und Kultur, Band 1 Geisteswissenschaften und Band 2 Naturwissenschaften leider noch im Druck. 5. Band der Enzyklopädie und andere, die ich auf Folien präsentieren werde. Besonders erwähnen möchte ich die dem Jubiläum gewidmete Projekte, die in den Bibliotheken von Lviv durchgeführt wurden. In den Ausstellungshalle von Wassil Stefanik Nationalbibliothek der Ukraine in Lviv wurde die Buch- und Dokumentationsausstellung, die Bibliothek der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft, die erste Nationalbibliothek der Ukraine, Anlässlich der 150-jährigen Bestehens der Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft der Wissenschaften und der 130-jährigen Jubiläums der Gründung der Gesellschaftsbibliothek gezeigt. Die Ausstellung zeigt Bücher, Dokumente, Manuskripte, alte Drucke, Karten und eine Porträtgalerie der Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft. Unter den Exponaten befinden sich auch die Fotografien und gedruckte Veröffentlichungen der mathematisch-naturhistorisch-medizinischen Sektion. Projekt 2, das war von Juni bis Oktober 2023, führte die Wassil-Stefanik-Nationalbibliothek der Ukraine in Lviv mit Unterstützung der ukrainischen Kulturstiftung das Projekt Bucherbe der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft 1874-1913 digitale Sammlung durch. Ziel dieses Projekts war es, den einzigartigen Bestand der Wassil-Stefanik-Nationalbibliothek der Ukraine zu präsentieren, die die Rechtsnachfolgerin der Bibliothek der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft ist und die vollständigste Sammlung der von der Gesellschaft veröffentlichten Druckwerke weltweit besitzt. Es wurden 500 in der Druckerei der Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft in den Jahren 1874-1913, den ersten beiden Perioden der Tätigkeit der Gesellschaft, veröffentlichte Werke digitalisiert. Bei der Digitalisierung von Exemplaren aus der Sammlung der Wassil-Stefanik-Nationalbibliothek der Ukraine in Lviv blieben Originalautographen, Exlibris, Marginalien und andere geschützte Elemente erhalten, die nicht nur die Geschichte der Existenz des Exemplars bezeugen, sondern auch seinen artefaktischen Wert erhöhen. Und das nächste Projekt, das ist Projekt der Wissenschaftlichen Bibliothek der Nationalen Medizinischen Danylo-Halyzkyj-Bibliothek. Ich bin Direktorin. Medizinische Kommission der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft 1898-2023. 1892 gründete die Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft eine mathematisch-naturwissenschaftlich-ärztliche medizinische Sektion, die in folgenden Bereichen tätig war: Durchführung von Forschungsarbeiten und Veröffentlichung der Ergebnisse, Schaffung einer ukrainischen wissenschaftlichen Terminologie, Verfassen populärwissenschaftlicher Artikel und Bücher, Übersetzung wissenschaftlicher Artikel, Bücher und Rezensionen der medizinischen Literatur ins Ukrainische. Im Jahr 1897 begann man mit der Herausgabe der Sammlung mathematisch-naturwissenschaftlicher ärztlichen Sektion. Unser Ziel war es, eine Chronik der Medizinischen Kommission der Wissenschaftlichen Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft und Biografien ihrer Vollmitglieder zu verfassen. In diesem Projekt haben wir Literatur und Quellen aus der Sammlung Wassil-Stefanik-Nationalbibliothek der Ukraine in Lviv, Wissenschaftlichen Bibliothek der Nationalen Medizinischen Danylo-Halyzkyj-Universität, der Wissenschaftliche Bibliothek der Nationalen Iwan-Franko-Universität Lviv, der Bibliothek des Herder-Instituts Marburg, des Zentralen Historischen Staatsarchivs der Ukraine in Lviv und des Archivs der Wissenschaftlichen Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft in Lviv verwenden. Wir haben die digitalisierte Ausgaben der Sammlung und der Chronik der Sitzungsberichte der mathematisch-naturwissenschaftlich-ärztlichen Sektion 1897-1938 analysiert. Auch haben wir die medizinische Sammlungen 1898-1901 und medizinische Bulletin 1954-2006 veröffentlicht in Amerika. Werke der Wissenschaftlichen Gesellschaft, Medizinische Sammlung, Medizin und Biologie, neue Reihe, das war 2003-2015 und auch auf Ukrainisch Праці НТШ медичні науки seit 2015. Sammlung der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft und Personalakte ihrer Vollmitglieder 1898-1942, Dokumente und persönliche Akten von Vollmitgliedern Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft seit 1992, Literatur und Nachrufe für ausländische Mitglieder, fotografisches Material, das alles haben wir analysiert. Auf der Grundlage unserer Forschungsergebnisse wurde ein Buch veröffentlicht. Es umfasst die folgenden Abschnitte: Chronik der Medizinischen Kommission auf Ukrainisch und Englisch, Vollmitglieder 1899-1940, ausländische Vollmitglieder der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft 1914-1924, Vollmitglieder während des Zweiten Weltkriegs, Vollmitglieder in der ukrainischen Diaspora 1947-2002 und auch Vollmitglieder 1992-2023, Bibliografie und Fotomaterialien. Unsere Publikation enthält biografische Informationen und Materialien über die wissenschaftliche, geistig-fachliche Tätigkeit der in Lemberg von den Anfängen der Gründung einer separaten medizinischen Kommission und der Wahl ihrer ersten Mitglieder bis zum heutigen Tag. Jede Biografie wird ergänzt durch eine Beschreibung der wichtigsten wissenschaftlichen Arbeiten und der Literatur über die Persönlichkeit, die Vollmitglieder der Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft in Lemberg war. In den 125 Jahren der wissenschaftlichen Tätigkeit der Medizinischen Kommission waren bekannte ukrainische Wissenschaftler und Ärzte Vollmitglieder der Gesellschaft. Einen nicht minder bedeutenden Beitrag zur Entwicklung und Tätigkeit der Medizinischen Kommission leisten aber auch die ausländischen Wissenschaftler, die zu Vollmitgliedern Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft gewählt wurden. Unter denen sind vertreten verschiedene Länder: Frankreich, Österreich, Kroatien, Bulgarien und die Tschechische Republik, die sich auf verschiedene Bereiche der Medizin und Naturwissenschaft spezialisiert haben. Am 18. März 1914 wurden 2 französische Wissenschaftler zu Vollmitgliedern der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft gewählt. Das war Antoni Raul, Anthropologe, Biologe, Ethnologe, Anatome, Embryologe, Psychologe. Sein ganzes Leben lang arbeitete er im Labor für vergleichende Anatomie der Nationalmuseum für Naturgeschichte Frankreich und ab 1921 als Direktor. Er hat mehr als 265 Publikationen. Noch möchte ich über Léonce Pierre Manouvrier sagen. Er war auch Professor, Doktor der Philosophie, Anthropologe, Anatom und Psychologe. Und im Jahr 1904 wurde er Präsident der Psychologischen Gesellschaft und er war Autor von etwa 150 wissenschaftlichen Arbeiten. Zwischen Prag und Lemberg fand ein Austausch von wissenschaftlichen und praktischen Erfahrungen und Veröffentlichungen statt. Die ukrainisch-tschechische wissenschaftliche Beziehungen werden durch die Wahl von Karl Chodunski von Vollmitglied der Gesellschaft im Jahr 1914 und von Jindřich Matejka im Jahr 1924 belegt. Karl Chodunski war Doktor der Medizin, Professor für Pharmakologie und Pharmakognosie an der Tschechischen Universität. Er war Mitglied der Tschechischen Akademie der Wissenschaften. Er erforschte in der Bereich Klimatherapie, Balneologie, Pharmakologie, Toxikologie und für seine Arbeit, das ist sehr wichtig, wurde er mit dem Franz-Josef-Orden ausgezeichnet und erhielt 1929 die Ehrendoktorwürde der medizinischen Wissenschaften der Masaryk-Universität in Brünn. Jindřich Matejka war Professor für Anthropologie und Demographie an der Tschechischen Universität. Er war Mitglied der Tschechischen Akademie der Wissenschaften, 1929-1930 Rektor der Karls-Universität und Autor mehr als 250 wissenschaftlichen Arbeiten. Die Wahl von Professoren auf Frankreich und Tschechien zu Vollmitgliedern der Gesellschaft zeugt von der Anerkennung, dem Respekt und der Zusammenarbeit ukrainischen Wissenschaftler und Mediziner mit ausländischen Gelehrten sowie dem Erfahrungsaustausch. Zu Vollmitgliedern der Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft gehören auch Fritz Pregl, Doktor der Medizin, Professor für Chemie, Universität Graz, gewählt 1923, und Stefan Wachew, auch Hygieniker, Professor, Universität Sofia, erwählt 1924. Wir haben auch Belege dafür gefunden, dass während der deutschen Besetzung von Lemberg, als die Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft verboten wurde, 10 Ärzte zur Vollmitglieder gewählt wurden. Hier zeige ich auch die Archivmaterialien. Auch haben wir die Namen vieler Vertreter der ukrainischen Diaspora in verschiedenen Ländern der Welt ermittelt, die Vollmitglieder der wissenschaftlichen Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft waren, darunter 12 Personen. Leider haben wir die Liste noch nicht erforscht, und die Liste ist unvollständig und erforscht weitere Untersuchung. Seit 1992 sind 23 Wissenschaftler der Medizinischen Kommission Vollmitglieder der Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft geworden, und ein amerikanischer Professor aus Chicago, Wassily Lonchina, wurde empfohlen. Als Ergebnis unserer Arbeit haben wir 67 Biografien fertiggestellt. Wir haben eine Bibliografie der Medizinischen Kommission der Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft zusammengestellt und unveröffentlichte Fotos aus den Sammlungen der Wassil Stefanek Nationalbibliothek der Ukraine verwenden. Die Relevanz des Themas der Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft wird durch die Studie der deutschen Wissenschaftler Martin Rode über die Geschichte der Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft, nationale Wissenschaft zwischen zwei Imperien belegt. Die Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft der Wissenschaften 1892-1918, der seine Dissertation im Jahr 2020 verteidigt hat. Die Schewtschenko-Wissenschaftsgesellschaft hat einen langen und schwierigen Weg zurückgelegt und einen unschätzbaren Beitrag zur Entwicklung der ukrainischen Wissenschaft und Kultur geleistet. Während des Krieges war es schwierig, Forschungen zu organisieren und durchzuführen, da nicht alle Bestände in ukrainischen Archiven und Bibliotheken vorhanden waren. Für die Überdienstreise kann ich absolut nicht reden, weil das war auch nicht so einfach und das war auch unmöglich. Ausstellungen, Bücherpräsentationen, Konferenzen und andere Veranstaltungen fanden während Stromausfällen, zwischen Luftangriffen und Raketenangriffen an unserem Land statt. Doch trotz des Kriegsrechts in der Ukraine hat des zweiten Jahren russisch-ukrainischen Krieges wurde das 150-jährige Bestehen der Schewtschenko-Gesellschaft auf staatlicher Ebene gefeiert. Vielen Dank.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I'm very glad to take part in the 51st ABDOS conference and express my gratitude to the conference committee and personally to its head, Dr. Barbrun, for including my presentation to the conference program. I want to start with a brief comment on the final words of my report's title concerning perspectives in the wartime. You all know that to this moment, Russia has already completely or partially destroyed hundreds of Ukrainian libraries. So the preservation of documentary heritage accumulated in libraries, archives, and museums in Ukraine are of high priority. That's why we talk so much and so often about the urgent necessity to digitize holdings, not only to provide access to researchers, but to create preservation copies of the documents of historical and cultural value. Unfortunately, on the national level, this problem was not properly developed and coordinated. The project of the National Digital Library of Ukraine, so-called NEBU, was presented on January 31, 2024, and now it is under consideration of the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy. Under such circumstances, many libraries launched their own digital collections of historical and cultural heritage. The following slides displays some examples. The first, the Vernadsky National Library of Ukraine, Yaroslav Mudry National Library of Ukraine, the National Historical Library of Ukraine, only three, but there are much more. Our library started digitizing its collection in 2003 under an agreement between the library and the Osolinsky National Institute in Wrocław. During the 20 years of cooperation, almost 5 million digital copies of various types of documents, manuscripts, books, and periodicals have been made. User access to all digitized copies was provided through the Lower Silesian Digital Library. In cooperation with the Grzegorz Sianok City Library, we digitized a number of Polish periodicals, which is available on the Digital Library of Lemkiewszczyna and Sianok Land. More than 820 religious codices, gospels, liturgical books, commentaries, music, homilies, and other religious literature were digitized under an agreement with the Hill Museum and Manuscript Library of St. John's Abbey and University, Collegeville, Minnesota, USA, and are available on the Hill Museum and Manuscript Library portal. In 2024, thanks to the efforts of the library's long-term partner, the Osolinsky National Institute, I mentioned it earlier, within the project Common Heritage Under Threat, the library received the new scanning equipment for a modern copy center, as well as software with cloud storage. Thus, having overcome the crisis in material and technical and software support for the digitalization of documents, the library has come close to the issue of a strategy for selecting documents based on their historical and cultural value. Today, Stefanik National Library is one of the largest owners among institutions of archival and library collections of the Ukrainian diaspora in Ukraine, and we started with these collections. In general, the Stefanik National Library has 8 library collections of the Ukrainian post-war immigrants who lived in Western Europe, Canada, and the United States. All mentioned collections were gifts to our library and were made in the period between 2002 and 2023. Here is the list of their owners. Omelian Antonovich, a doctor of law, public figure and philanthropist, and his wife, Tetiana Antonovich, a doctor of medicine, nephrologist, philanthropist. Marian Kots, artist, public and cultural figure, journalist, editor, publisher. Lubomir Vinar, Ukrainian and American scholar, historian, bibliographer, public figure, president of the Ukrainian American Association of University Professors, head of the World Scholarly Council at the Ukrainian World Conference, a full member of the Schewtschenko Scientific Society, the founder and the head of the Ukrainian Historical Association, a member of the Executive Committee of the Ukrainian National Council. Dmytro Buchinsky, literary critic, bibliographer, journalist, chief editor of the Ukrainian department at Radio Nacional de España. Mikhailo Sviatomir Foston, Doctor of Law, writer, journalist, secretary of the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain and the World Congress of Free Ukrainians. Vice President of the International Committee for Science and Culture at the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine, public and political figure. Volodymyr Gavrilyuk, journalist of Ukrainian and French newspapers, writer. Andrei Bidos, member of the Association of Former Ukrainian Soldiers in the UK, editor and publisher. Ukrainian Library Society in Toronto, Canada, founded in 1987 in the province of Ontario, Canada. All the listed collections were gifts. Some of them were made personally, others we received after their owner's death according to their will. The collections of Omelyan and Tatiana Antonovich, Marian and Ivan Nakots, Lyubomir Vener, and Dmytro Buchinsky contain not only books but also periodicals and cartographic publications, combined with numerous archival complexes and collections of artworks, photographs, and other types of documents. These collections should be considered not only from the point of view of scientific information and research potential, but also in the context of studying bibliophile strategies in the Ukrainian diaspora, practical and theoretical aspects of collectioning in the second half of the 20th century. For example, the library of Omelyan and Tatiana Antonovich includes 1,026 books, 18 works of art, and large archive, which is divided into 3 parts. The first part, documents of Tatiana Antonovich, biographical documents, materials on her professional and scientific activities in the United States as a prominent nephrologist, head of the Department of Nephropathology at the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology in Washington, the George Washington University. The second part, documents of Omelyan Antonovich related to the Ukrainian national underground struggle in Poland, correspondence, documents of the Ukrainian Main Liberation Council and other political organizations, materials of his stay in camp for displaced persons in Germany, where he was sent after Sachsenhausen camp. His activities in the Association of Ukrainians in Washington, the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, the Publishing Prologue Association. The third part are materials of the Tatiana and Omelyan Antonovich Foundation, organizational materials, correspondence, diplomas, and speeches of the prize winners, text of speeches, etc. The books from the Antonovich collection contains autographs of many distinguished figures of Ukrainian culture, mostly the winners of the Omelyan and Tatiana Antonovich Foundation Annual Prize for Literary Works and Ukrainian Studies, regardless of the author's place of residence. Many digitized documents from the Omelyan and Tatiana Antonovich's collection was used for designing Memorial Antonovich's reading room, which simultaneously operates as a computer reading room. Another example of such a complex collection is that of Marian Kots, a figure of great importance for our library. Marian Kots was born on 29 June 1922 in Lviv. With the arrival of Soviet troops to Western Ukraine, he emigrated to Poland. After the end of the World War II, he moved to Germany and then was taken to a camp for displaced persons. He worked at the headquarters of the American sector, UNRRA, later called the International Refugee Organization. In 1952, he and his wife moved to the United States of America. In 1953-54, he studied at New York University and later became a financist. He was vice president of the Central Ukrainian Cooperative of America in Jersey City. He devoted considerable efforts to informing the public about the Holodomor in Ukraine and published a number of books on the topic. He invested in support of publishing projects, including the fundamental publication Ukrainian Folk Melodies in 6 volumes by Zinoviy Lysko and others. His private collection includes books, periodicals, 8,671 items in total, as well as a valuable art collection of 154 works, including 11 sculptures and 143 pieces of painting and graphics, including a portrait engraving Baron Claude by Taras Shevchenko. This engraving is the only piece by Shevchenko in our library. That's why we are very proud of it. And other prominent Ukrainian artists. The library of Dmytro Buchensky, also the pieces from the collection of Marian Kots. The library of Dmytro Buchensky, a bibliographer, journalist, literary critic, and representative of the Ukrainian diaspora in Madrid. His library was transferred to Lviv in 2019 and consists of 3,907 books and periodicals, 858 postcards, 848 envelopes with addresses, 169 photographs, and 1,865 stamps. Buchensky's stamp collection was considered to be the best and most complete collection of Ukrainian stamps in the whole diaspora at that time. When we received this collection, especially his archive, we discovered that Buchensky was a really distinguished person, almost unknown in Ukraine. Today, his biography is a valuable source for studying previously unknown or insufficiently covered in the scientific literature episodes of cultural and scientific relations between different Ukrainian emigre centers and cultural diplomatic activities carried out by representatives of the Ukrainian diaspora in the period after the Second World War in Europe, North and South America, and Australia. Born in the Ternopil region, after defending his doctoral thesis at the Ukrainian Free University in Munich, he lived and worked in Madrid from 1949 to 1963, was associated with the activities of the Schewtschenko Scientific Society in Canada, and cooperated with its branches in Europe, particularly in France. Among other documents, the archive contains systematized, dated, and bounded typewritten texts, totally 2,000 documents of radio programs that Dmytro Buchensky conducted as the head of the Ukrainian editorial office of the Spanish National Radio in 1952-1963. In 1956, 58, and 61, Dmytro Buchensky organized exhibitions of Ukrainian books at the National Library of Spain. And these are indexes compiled by Buchensky on the base of these exhibitions. Many books from Dmytro Buchensky collections have autographs, inscriptions, and notes confirming the fact that Buchensky conducted extensive correspondence, mostly related to his active literary and critical work. Here we have some archival documents. The first one is the typescript of Dmytro Buchinsky's article dedicated to the 46th anniversary of Ukrainian People's Republic, published in one of Spanish ministerial editions in Madrid in 1963. The next one is a letter of Dmytro Buchinsky as a head of Statute Committee to the members of the Public Assembly regarding the development of the draft of Charter Statute of the Ukrainian Association in Spain. This one is the text of radio audition about Soviet occupation of Ukraine under title The Chronicles of Moscow Hell, 1963. The next document is the article by Dmytro Buchinsky about the tragedy of the Greek Catholic Church in Ukraine after Soviet occupation, published in one of Spanish religious magazines. Steps to create digital collections were launched within the research project, The Resources of the Stefanik National Library of Ukraine in Lviv, Historical Dimensions and Innovative Forms of Presentation, which involve the research on collections, followed by digitization of their content and presentation of the result through the Automated Library Information System, ALEF. For this purpose, a page, Resources and Collections division, Digital Collections, was created in the library's electronic infrastructure, which includes an access mode and contains a short information insert with a description of each electronic collection. Library collections of representatives of the post-war Ukrainian immigration are a part of the historical and cultural heritage of Ukraine and a source for study. The book and press publishing activities of the Ukrainian immigration and other bases for the future, we suppose, bibliography of Ukrainian immigration publications. Social and political life of the Ukrainian immigration, parties, organizations, institutions, foundations, and societies, cultural, artistic, and scientific life, the activities of the Ukrainian Free Academy of Science, so-called UVAN, and Taras Shevchenko National Academy of Sciences, and the Ukrainian Historical Society. Bibliophile strategies of Ukrainian immigration in the second half of the 20th century, biographies of representatives of the Ukrainian immigration, practical aspects of the Ukrainian immigration struggle with Soviet and communist propaganda during the Cold War. Cultural and diplomatic relations of Ukrainian emigration with state institutions of the countries of their residence. It is very important, the role of Ukrainian emigration in preserving the national identity and recovering historical memory of Ukrainians. Within the libraries, it's the same. Thus, the library plans to overcome the problem of access to these unique collections and reveal the information potential of the documentary heritage of the Ukrainian immigration, in particular to reveal the significance of the personalities of the owners of these collections, their significant personal contribution to Ukrainian culture, science, public life, and the preservation of Ukrainian identity in the conditions of emigration during the Cold War, when mainland Ukraine suffered from Soviet terror. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much to ABDOS for inviting me and everyone here for being here. on this lovely day. So, and yes, this is a very difficult topic, but I decided to speak about it. And there were several, of course. We know that what we are living through is absolutely unique situation. And when I was doing some research in the archives of the British Library, I found many interesting stories. One of them was about a sack of Bolshevik literature deposited to Britain in one of the ports of Britain in 1920, and that was a long, long saga when a representative of Scotland Yard was working in the British Museum Library for several months, and it was an argument between the trustees of the British Library and the Scotland Yard about whether to give access to the collection to this Bolshevik literature, right, or not. Then the trustees won, and the compromise was reached so that this Bolshevik literature, propaganda literature, was given to the British Museum and accession to the collections, but access to this was restricted, not fully denied, but restricted. And then there was really interesting collection of Soviet propaganda aimed at the German forces during the Second World War, which was given to the British Museum Library by the Foreign Ministry. Again, I was looking at it from the historical point of view, right? And never thought that I would be in this situation in, my professional life. So that was one of the kind of drivers to start thinking together about this situation. And we even decided to have to give a research project. And one of our junior curators actually had a fellowship to research this topic, but unfortunately it didn't happen, that she had to leave for personal circumstances, nothing to do with professional life, but she just had to cancel the whole project. And then the other thing that is going at the background, although Jürgen was very, very nice introducing me as a representative of the British Library, but probably it's not a secret now that since the beginning of end of October, beginning of November 2023, so we are not functioning properly after having suffered a cyber attack. And this is another dimension of the whole situation of collecting and giving access. So, and this year at the BASIS, there was a roundtable organized by researchers, which was called Access Denied, exactly on this topic. And we will be talking about it with postgraduate students at Oxford at the COSILIS conference, so what researchers need. But I think, is it this one? No? This one. This one? Aha. Yeah, but for me, a starting point for thinking about it was a blog by Anatol Shmelov at Harvard, who went to Ukraine in 2022, just several months after the full-scale Russian invasion started. So, and he wrote, he brought some archival material with him to Harvard and wrote a blog, and that's kind of the conclusion from his blog. So I won't read it, but of course you will see the gist of it, that, paper is not used to broadcast social and political sentiments among the masses now. So it's all very digital. We have to watch social media and very ephemeral, such an ephemeral thing as electronic resources. And again, before the cyber attack, it was kind of obvious. After the cyber attack, now we've left with no access to our digitized material or web archive. I think it's probably also not a very safe option. But again, this is for discussion. And then I came up with some discussion points that I will kind of go through some of them now. So from the researchers' perspective, who are doing the research now, and many of them not doing the kind of contemporary research. So when they're doing contemporary research, they normally don't come to the library because they're very much aware of what Anatol Shmylov was talking about. So they go online and they research the situation as it develops. But they do historical research and they need access to content. For example, archives, and most of the researchers cannot go to neither of these three countries we're talking about. So, of course, some go to Lviv and Kiev, but not very many, especially postgraduate students. So they cannot get paid, cannot use paid copying services from Russia or Belarus, which they very used to, and they keep asking librarians about, what can be done, and nothing much can be done. So, and while I was again looking for various options, I myself realized that web archiving and stability of links are not not very consistent for a variety of reasons. Again, for Ukraine, it's probably because of the war that is actually happening on the ground. For Russia and Belarus, it's mainly because of censorship and various things appear and disappear. And another layer is that we now cannot access, some sites, being them these Ukrainian, Russian, or Belarusian, are considered by our firewalls some harmful material, and we cannot really reach them. So it's a kind of a mixture of really unpredictable sort of circumstances. So on the other hand, we have librarians who collect for the future. We keep telling our senior management that we're collecting for perpetuity, we're collecting for the future, and not so much. We have to respond to the situation now, but what we're collecting now will be used probably much later. So this is the material and the purpose of the material, library versus archives. So we have archival ephemeral material where we want to document the political situation on the ground, but also we have kind of the library part of the story, and we want to have a snapshot of the situation in the printing and publishing industries and the academia, what is happening in the countries. So print versus digital, again, how much print we have to get and can get. So how much digital material and how much of it we can preserve, because obviously we cannot preserve. We know, of course, I won't repeat about Suture project, which is a fantastic initiative, but for example, in the UK, we cannot archive foreign material, and I've learned yesterday that in France it's not possible. So, and then there is the most difficult thing is ethical versus impartial attitude and rational attitude to the collections, because ethically it's now very difficult to collect material that you don't agree with and you feel is might be harmful, but again, for the kind of rational attitude to the collections, that this is something that we need to look very closely at. So practical issues, information, and information, again, we that's very easy to forget that there are really big holes, black holes of information, again, for various reasons in different countries. But the biggest black hole is, of course, the occupied territories in Ukraine. So where we don't know much what is happening at all. So there are legal issues, again, linked to the occupied territories, linked to the sanctions, and, for example, the UK banks are now looking at all the transactions, that even if the first transaction is happening in Russia or Belarus, they might be tightening their rules. And bureaucracy, of course, in our organizations. I don't know about your organizations, but libraries probably not the easiest organizations to navigate. And I will come back to content, but say a few words about it. So, because we want to have a snapshot of what is happening in the publishing, in the whole kind of landscape. For example, we can see now that the Ukrainian book market, which I'll talk about a little bit later, is now growing so much, but the section that are growing really fast are the translations into Ukrainian. And, of course, children's books and textbooks. So we traditionally didn't get translations into kind of languages if it wasn't between English and the language we're collecting. But we would never get just normal translations from German or French into, let's say, Ukrainian or Belarusian. Now, for me, it's a kind of problem, and I want again to put it for discussion, how much of it we might see as a representation, as a part of this snapshot of how the industry and publishing is working. So Belarusian translations are normally happening outside Belarus. So all these new publishing houses that are mushrooming across Europe, Belarusian diaspora publishing, so they are publishing in Belarusian. And this is a unique now situation that, so the Belarusian language is thriving outside Belarus, but not inside. So again, the textbooks and curriculum and propaganda material on all sides, that how we navigate through this and how much of it we actually need in the collections. So a few words about Ukrainian book market. But first of all, I would like to say that when I was preparing this presentation, exactly on the day when I was preparing this presentation, I was looking into the figures and statistics and was reading about the news on the market, and was doing this slide when I learned about the Russian missile attack on the printing house of the World Publishing House in Kharkiv, where 7 civilians were killed. So, and again, this is, even looking at this slide is quite tragic, right? Although it doesn't represent any of the devastations, but just figures. So these were the figures given by the Ukrainian Institute and from the various sources in Forbes, Ukrainian Forbes. So this is interesting how, this is the aim. Like in the article, the aim was at least Poland, because I think the population is more or less comparable with Poland and Ukraine. So that is the aim of how the Ukrainian market should be developing. But the market was kind of doing really well after the first COVID year and was growing. Of course, there was a big fall in 2022, but in 2023, so we can see that there are 270 new publishers. Of course, big support was given by the government to these new publishers and new bookshops. This is another thing that is developing really, really fast. 73% more of new books. So can you imagine just these two figures? From 2022, there are 73% of new titles, new books in Ukrainian language only. Because I think you know that this law that prohibits distribution of Russian language books was finally signed by Zelensky in October 2023. So, but of course we were looking for online resources. As I mentioned, our cyber attack. So what we were supposed to do, so how we could give access to our print material. So now researchers can have books, can order books on paper ticket. So if you if you forget how to do it and want to experience go in a time machine, you're welcome to London. We could not, for quite a bit of time, we couldn't even give researchers access to print books, print collections. So, and we immediately started putting together lists of free or digitized resources. We created quite a long list for all countries, and I was doing Ukraine. And also, while doing this, I've realized how much Ukraine actually moved in terms of open access for journals. So a lot of, because for quite a long period of time, Poland was leading on open access. I don't know whether Ukraine is now leading, but a lot of titles of journals were just open access or free. And this is absolutely amazing, so we were trying to list as many as possible. So now we're... So moving to publishing trends and research trends in Russia, of course, the trends which are obvious are in academia, of course, that academia is suffering because of the, people leaving Russia, and especially in social sciences, not so much in humanities, but social sciences. And of course, the quality is dropping. So now the book market is kind of slowly going down, not crushing, but slowly going down. Also, wanted to show some figures. So 18.2% of the whole market were translations, and 25% titles in languages other than Russian. So, but also what was interesting, that the growth of, the numbers was mainly because of second and third editions of classical authors. So a lot of classical authors were republished. If we're talking about translations and foreign authors, a lot of them were just out of copyright. So again, republishing and recycling. And price increase, of course, that was one of the major things that hit the Russian market. Okay. Oops. So now talking about censorship and publishing abroad. So a few words about censorship. You probably know that there was a new law against LGBTQ introduced in Russia, and in the official report from the book chamber, I read the following, that the most popular book, the first in terms of copies sold, in 2022 was «Лето в пионерском галстуке», Summer in a Pioneer Tie, which was an LGBTQ novel, not a very good one, but so it was prohibited, but was the most popular, and most of copies were sold. So you can see it is totally schizophrenic. So on the other side, these from the original, written in the original Russian. Translations, Orwell, 1984. Again, most of the copies were sold. Was first place in terms of sold copies, and again now prohibited in libraries. So because next to it you can see a list of authors that libraries are not supposed to either buy and need to read from their collections. So, and Orwell is one of them. So you see that this is how to capture this in the collections, I know not, but one of the examples of capturing this was this book. It's a biography of Pasolini, recently published in Moscow. And normally, again, this wouldn't be, something that we would buy, a biography on Pasolini in Russian. Why would I be interested in it? However, I am now because of the look of it. So again, because of the LGBTQ legislation, so some pages were kind of blocked out, and I haven't seen it in this book, but I just hope I'll see, and this is what it is on the picture. So publishing Belarus, what is happening, trends, changes and challenges. So again, according to the official report of the Belarusian book chamber, they say that sanctions had a lot of impact on paper production, printing facilities, and especially in 22. They're now kind of back on track in 23. So, but also there is a new legislation that was issued in July 2023, and the whole point of this legislation is to give sort of licenses to publishing houses, and of course during this process a lot of publishing houses lost their licensing to publish. And even some people were arrested during this procedure. So then there's censorship and self-censorship and political repression. So we all know that, in Belarus it's much worse, and at least 20 new news websites were labeled extremist by the authorities, and domain were cancelled. So again, talking about web archiving and what we could have done and probably we didn't do. So these sites are not available anymore. the Belarusian Association of Journalists, and again, which changed its domain name in 2023 in anticipation of losing its old address, they published a list of these news news enterprises. So, but whether this information has been captured somewhere or not, we don't know. In the same document, they were saying that additional state measures were aimed at supporting legal deposit, but looking at the statistics, you can see that the dynamics of... Oh, okay, right, okay. Yeah, uh-huh. Oh, he woke up. Right. Okay. Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah. So this is about the end of the presentation, right? So again, publishing statistics in Belarus, they're going down, and despite the special measures of introduced by the state aimed on depositing more to the National Library, you can see how the figures are dropping. And I'm not quite sure whether this is publishing or dropping the figures of depositing, they're kind of sum up. So, but this is what is happening in Belarus. And the next, and the next one is Belarusian resources online. So from Belarus and from abroad, and now again more and more are is being published outside Belarus. So I'll probably stop here because my next slide was just to sum up, going back to content, but I don't want Lilida to stay awake for far too long. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon to everybody out there in Strasbourg. I'm sorry for the time mix-up we had. Having said that, I spoke with Eva, and I was told that we can send out the presentation to the participants simply because the time will not do justice to all of the participants at ABDOS as well as to the presentation. Having said that, I wanted to, of course, thanks Eva and Jürgen.
Actually, Lilida, we still have some time left. So if you think you could do it.
Yeah, express version, like
express version, yes. Then okay. we could still fit it in, so that would give us a much better feeling. It's not. We are not thinking of you. We are thinking of our conscience.
No. Conscience should be clean because you are my colleagues, and things happen, and there are a lot of moving parts. But I will quickly share my presentation. There are slides, but I know we don't have a lot of time. How much time will I have? 10 minutes? Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. So it's up to you. I'm with you. Whatever you tell me.
My Swiss colleague is saying 10, but she's Swiss, so I will say 12.
Okay. All right. So let me just quickly present, and let me launch the presentation here and share the screen with you. And I hope you can see it. There we go. So I'm going to be very short. Can you see my quick presentation? So the purpose of collaborating across, can you see it now?
Yes, now it's here.
Okay. Collaborating across the continents, documenting war in Ukraine. The basic question I was asking is, why should we even document the wars, right? Because it's a tricky business. And it's a nuanced business which involves human tragedies, unprecedented loss of life, and material things. But I believe that war in Ukraine was such a modern war where one country aggressed against other, crossed the borders, and collective security was kind of put under threat. Having said that, I will not focus much on the importance of documenting the war in Ukraine through web archiving because much has been written about it. I will quickly go over the current initiatives and genesis of ideas for collaborating across the continents. And that's important part of my presentation. The other one is online outreach events. And lastly, exhibition capturing struggle Ukraine through American and Ukrainian lenses. So what are the initiatives, right? So we are talking about them and you will see them. So current initiatives are right across your screen: IIPC Collaboration, Collection for War in Ukraine, Saving Ukrainian Cultural Heritage Online, and then you see Berkeley Archived Collaboration and IB Plus and DocuDays. But having said that, what sets us apart from the others? And one of the things we had in our mind was, what can we do with limited resources and limited crawling space for web archiving without sacrificing some of the, I will call specific characteristics of our archive. And one of the things we decided get-go is call out for collaborators. Now, you know, librarians are often they collaborate with each other under certain circumstances, while they, at the same time, at least in the North America, there is a sense of competition and creating a sense of uniqueness. Like I was just listening to Katya's presentation and the Pasolini's books, right, about LGBTQ issues. For example, it creates a sense of uniqueness. Now, everybody cannot have access to it because perhaps it's a very limited edition book. It's difficult to get it. So that type of situation always exists everywhere in academia and in the world in which we exist. So we thought it's best to send out a call, be transparent about our efforts, and the partners who reached out to us were Bavarian State Library, and we were quite surprised, right, because it's such a well-known institution, and it was like refreshing to see that our colleagues, Gudrun Word, special note of thanks, Lunia Yeshke, and Sofia Straub of the BSP were forthcoming, open, and open to the collaboration and ideas. So we had series of meetings and a series of conversations across the ocean. And we decided that one thing which might be worth documenting was European response. So initially I had thought of it as a West European response rather than European response, but then I realized that the reality on grounds are very different. In light of European Union. So we decided to change the name of the facet from West European response to European response. Currently, we have 184 seats in English, German, Spanish, and other languages. It led to the capture of rich imagery of text and video files, and about 9.1 gigabyte of data has been archived, and the crawls have been automated. So the archive is open, the metadata has been created courtesy of Bavarian State Library. Lastly, the other thing, people were laughing at me, why are you collecting Russian responses or Russian reaction and separatist responses? I thought to myself that it's important to also present the fact that within Russia, there is a dissent, right? Although we say, oh, it is ruled by somebody and it acts in certain weird way. It's a bull in the China. It doesn't in the China shop where it comes and destroys everything. And that's not necessary. It's very nuanced, the picture of war. So we wanted to see what kind of dissent exists in Russia. So we started to crawl their social media, newspapers, and online sites. And currently we have 184 seats. That's and then Russian language media primarily included media based in Russian Federation. We have 90 seats for Russian language media, and also about very high quantity of data was archived, about 320 gigabytes. You can see some pictures about Navalny down there, and also the Wagner Group's removal of their placard from the billboard. Having said that, why we also, third one was Ukrainian governmental websites. what was the early rationale in the media? Oh, Ukraine will fall. Within 48 hours, the government will be kaput and it will suffer a series of defeats, and those governmental websites will be taken down. So with help from a colleague at Stanford, we decided to crawl 713 individual seats of provincial Ukrainian governments as well as central government. And most of the aim was to mostly archive PDF policy documents. So we have done that. And lastly, archives are always incomplete, although some people might disagree with me. So having said that, we had to triangulate web archive to other relevant activities. So at UC Berkeley, we envisioned and did the first webinar, I think a month and a half after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, or limited war operation, whatever they call it, and where the Ukrainian librarians spoke to our North American audiences, and it was very well coordinated with Hoorie, University of Wisconsin, and that event was a success. And 1 year later, we did the same event where the Ukrainian librarians and libraries revisited and they spoke. As you can see, it was done on February 15th of 2023. And then the next one was also women publishers in Ukraine, and that was done on March of 2023. Lastly, in March of 2024, to capture the struggle of Ukrainians through American and Ukrainian lenses, we envisioned and created an exhibit, which is online, and you can just Google it and you'll be able to find it. And, we have a strong Ukrainian faculty members on the campus who have been quite supportive, Yuri Gorodnichenko, Anastasia Fedik, and then there is a Monica Eppinger, who is also a lawyer by training. So they all supported this initiative, and library was convinced to do this exhibition. So once again, sorry for this espresso version early in the morning. Here, I wanted to conclude by saying that collaborating across the continent meant reaching out, taking initiative, practicing patience, right? Because sometimes we lack patience in a consumer society when we are rushing from one place to other place. But patience is very important to have a fruitful collaboration and respectful understanding of each other's needs as well as limitations. Any war is a complex and tragic. In the case of Ukraine, especially getting colleagues from Ukraine to speak on these webinars was a daunting task. Nevertheless, we did it. Collaborating with the librarians at Bavarian State Library's East European section was rewarding and professionally inspiring experience. Lastly, web archiving includes multiple perspectives, irrespective of ideologies, and people can disagree here. Need for financial resources is very important. We cannot really ignore, because Archivit came through and gave us almost like a carte blanche. I was surprised that they gave us like almost 5 terabytes of space. Whatever you want to crawl, please crawl. It's not competing against any other initiatives, but we would like to support your desire to document certain aspects of the war. And again, there is not to create a competing project within the community, because I do recognize our limitations and we work within those limitations. And that's the end of my presentation. I'm very sorry. It was a very short presentation, but here I am to take any questions you might have.